Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Mike Norvell, Florida State land, at least in my mind, a fascinating commitment in the 2025 class coming from three-star safety Max Redmon from the state of Florida. And what makes Max Redmon so fascinating to me is I get the feeling that this kid is just kind of an under-the-radar diamond in the rough in this 2025 cycle. And I'm not going to get up here and start banging the table that Max Redmon should be a five-star prospect in this 2025 class, but you dig into, some of the physical traits that Max Redmon brings to the table, you start getting really excited in terms of what this kid could be year 2, year 3, year 4 within this Florida State program. We talk about this all the time. I mean, the sport of football, it's a size speed game. You want to get big football players that are athletic. You look at Max Redmon, verified measurements, 6'1" 3/4, 191 pounds, a 78-inch wingspan, one of the longer defensive backs that you'll see in this 2025 cycle. And on top of all that, runs an 11.3 in the 100-meter dash with a basketball background. This is one of those kids that I think Mike Norvell is just looking at and say, hey, let's go bet on some traits with Max Redmon and see what he looks like year 2, year 3 within this program. And you've seen Mike Norvell and Florida State have success with some of these under the radar prospects in that defensive backfield. I think it kind of reminds me of Quindarius Jones coming out in the 2023 class, very similar body composition and recruiting service ranking. But what made Quindarius Jones so fascinating was there were some big time physical traits. You look up and look at what Quindarius Jones is doing within Florida State. This is a kid that seems to be pushing some of the best cornerbacks in the country for some playing time in 2024, going into year 2 of his college football career. I think Max Redmon, kind of a similar conversation in terms of what he brings to Florida State. Want to get into a little bit of the film, talk about what Max Redmon brings to this Florida State defense. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Florida State fans. A little bit of a heater on the recruiting trail. It's been a blast breaking down these commitments. The amount of support you guys continue to show, it really does mean the world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into Max Redmon. And outside of just the physical traits, this is the kind of defensive back that Mike Norvell, Patrick Surtain Sr., they're valuing in this defensive back room. Big physical defensive backs that can move. You go back to the 2024 class, Kai Bates, Jamari Howard, Charles Lester, even Gregory Xavier Thomas in this 2025 cycle. Hey, we want big, physically imposing defensive backs that can do a lot of different things. I think that's one of the things that entices me so much about Max Redmon. You look at the potential position versatility that Max Redmon brings. I think he can operate as a single high safety, a 2 high safety, but I think his best value might be as that buck safety that spends a lot of time around the line of scrimmage, being one of those bigger, physically imposing defensive backs that can give you some run support, potentially even playing a little bit of nickel. I think Max Redmon can do a lot of different things within this Florida State defense. You want to just get these kind of guys within your roster and kind of see what they look like over the next couple of years. And you get into the film, and again, there is some enticing moments on the film. One, there's some football IQ here, right? You see him reading the quarterback, kind of playing that single high safety look here where he's going to be reading the quarterback's eyes, commanding that middle of the field. When that football is in the air, we're going to go play it. You see some athleticism on the return as well. I think Max Redmon, couples some really enticing physical traits with some really good football IQ. Once again, commanding that middle of the field. This one, he's coming off being physical in the run game. You want safeties that can be able to tackle in space. Max Redmon certainly can do that. And I do foresee Max Redmon playing a decent amount as a box safety, as a defensive back that you can put in the box, give you that run support, also having that coverage ability. You continue to work through the film and say, the guy, again, commands the middle of the field. When that football is in the air, seems very comfortable cutting it off, making plays on footballs, kind of creating some of those game-changing plays, if you will. I think there's some really big-time physical traits. There's some really big-time versatility, and I think there's some football IQ with Max Redmon. Take a look at this rep right here, working more as a box safety, almost as that nickel defender. He's going to come up into the box, come off the edge, and give you that run support. Again, this is a guy that you can use in a lot of different ways, has the size to deal with some of those bigger split out wide tight ends in the slot. which you need your safeties and nickels to do at the collegiate level. He can come up into the box and be a guy that gives you run support, gets it done on the offensive side of the football. Again, this is a three-sport athlete: football, track, and basketball, plays two ways at the high school level. There are just some things that really excite me about Max Redmon. And again, I just get the feeling after diving into the film that he brings a little bit more than what the recruiting services might say. Again, you take a look at this rep here, playing a little bit more of that box safety role, getting after the quarterback downhill. I think this is a fascinating get for Florida State. You take a look at the 2025 class, and we talk about the blue chip ratio. Max Redmon might not necessarily help Florida State in the quote unquote blue chip ratio. According to 24/7 Sports, Florida State's easily going to fulfill the blue chip ratio in this 2025 cycle. It is littered with blue chip prospects, but the kind of guy Max Redmon is this staff has seen him a lot. They've had him on campus. They've seen him in person. They have a lot of information on Max Redmon. You kind of trust Mike Norvell in this defensive coaching staff in terms of their evaluation. You take a look at Florida State in terms of the average recruit commit that they have in this 2025 class. That's a 93.33. Extremely high. Again, you got 10 blue chip prospects that are committed to Florida State. If you are a Florida State fan, you're fired up in terms of what Mike Norvell is doing on the recruiting trail in 2025. You're seeing him use the transfer portal exceptionally well, but I mean, get it going on the recruiting trail, specifically in the front seven along the line of scrimmage. We talked about this last time we were talking Florida State on the recruiting trail. You start scrolling down and say, hey, where are Florida State's top commitments? Solomon Thomas, Peyton Joseph, offensive line of scrimmage guys, Kevin Wynn, Javan Hilson, defensive line of scrimmage guys. You look at a guy in Myron Charles who might have the highest upside in this 2025 class for Florida State, another line of scrimmage player. You love what Mike Norvell is doing on the recruiting trail, and just this seems like a program, at least from an outsider's perspective, that is just generating a lot of buzz with kids at the high school level. I am really excited to see what Florida State can do in 2024, but more importantly, how they can close in this 2025 cycle. We'll cut it there. Fascinating prospects for Max Redmon. I see us talking 2 years down the road and say, hey, what a get for Florida State in this 2025 cycle. Love the betting on the trades. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Talk to y'all later. Peace.